Cool people doing cool shit. Sounds pretty cool, doesn't it?
I'm Seth, and here we have creative power couple, Hannah Sullivan and Jeremy Verwys.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
The first thing is, how do you guys not hate each other because you're competing for who's the creative person?
I hadn't considered that was an option.
Oh, well, that's good
It's very
for
easy.
Jeremy.
I think we have that answer. I think for me, it's pretty easy because I don't consider myself to be particularly that creative. And so allowing it's just, I allow life to happen to me, and Hannah's like, hey, I got this really cool thing going on, and I just, you just roll with it. And I think it also helps that we're just in two completely different lanes, typically in a creative way.
Okay, well, first I would call bullshit on I'm not really I'm not really that creative.
Thank you. We both gave you the middle finger.
Respectfully,
Oh, well,
that's
okay.
fucking bullshit. But but for real, in all seriousness, it's not like there's a better version of partnership or anything like that. But
Sure.
but even if you are in a different lane, as you say, certainly your creative life makes demands, if only of your time, but it's never just your time, outside of the house. So extra hours gone. What I'm saying is that can be challenging for anybody. Then add to that you guys are in close enough of the same realm that I have, you've probably observed other couples that had sort of similar, and it can be sort of competitive and resentful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all joking aside, I think the thing that I experience I love watching Hannah perform, and I love watching Hannah be creative, and it brings me absolute joy to see her go do the long rehearsals, go do the big performances. And when I get to go, I think, a cornerstone of our initial attraction to one another.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna reflect on the same thing, that like we met each other in our crafts, and I think that was a big part of the attraction, was seeing each other in those crafts. And so I think even from the beginning we talked a lot about how we were able to give each other space to be creative, and that was, I think, something new for us to experience. And so it has felt like a cornerstone to our relationship, this idea that like I give you space to be creative, and that doesn't feel like taking away from me. I know that it fuels you, and like you'll come back to me. And I think in the last year and a half, we've had, just with having a little one and health issues pop up, we haven't been able to spend as much time in our crafts, but there's still been some intention in figuring out how each other does that. How do we go to those creative spaces?
So you have one of those quote unquote healthy relationships. That sounds really boring.
We can make it tumultuous.
I'm falling asleep already. Where's the drama? I mean, theatrics, not drama.
Yeah.
Drama has a bit.
Theatrics is just right around the corner in this household.
We will create theatrics if we're bored or feeling stale.
Well, it's inevitable that we would end up here, so let's just go there. Hannah, your day job is as a licensed therapist in what area?
Yeah, so I joined Grand Rapids Specialty Therapy a few years ago. We're on site with the Women's Plus Health Collective, which is an integrated multidisciplinary care center for people who are female identifying and or who have biological female sex organs. Everybody on site specializes in different areas of sexual wellness. For me as a therapist, I have specialty in mental health care. I have specialty in relationship care, and then relationship with body. So relationship with the sexual body, relationship with the body as a mover or a performing artist, relationship with the body as someone who's been pregnant or who has birthed a child. Yeah, so that's kind of the day job. So I social work and therapize by day and then dancey dance at night.
And Jeremy, in addition to being a annoyingly talented guitar player, frustratingly talented, maddeningly talented guitar player, rage-inducingly talented guitar player. You also are partners in a music therapy group.
Yeah, West Michigan Music Therapy. So I co-own that with another wonderful music therapist in town, Emily Peterson. Mm-hmm. And we've been open since 2019, and we're rocking and rolling and growing as fast as we can.
The intersection of what you guys both do is with your day job.
Yes.
I think for me especially, but I think probably for the population, mental health issues have been on everyone's mind, if not forever, certainly for the last 3 years.
100%.
And so really what I most am excited to hear from both of you guys about is the intersection of, to oversimplify, the intersection of creativity with mental health, mental illness, neurodivergence, whatever, and also that sounds like it's leading at you, but I mean even in what you do, not because you're neurodivergent, depressed. That's not what I meant. I'd like to say we'll cut that out, but we're leaving.
Let's keep it a lot.
But also in the music therapy, because I know for my own mental health, when 18 years ago, when Lillian Owen's mom was dying, we had music therapists that came through the hospice center and played for the patients or their families or both. Mm-hmm. And it was such a simple thing, but you saw, without exception, just that simple act of music performance. It didn't even matter what it was. Right. My personal experience with what you do is so specific and limited.
Yeah.
I don't really know what you do beyond that sort of a situation.
Well, and your situation with what you experience with music therapy is a really common experience. So music therapists work really heavily within hospice care. In fact, the co-owner, Emily Peterson, has a wonderful experience and is a hospice care guru. She's spent a lot of time working in that. Personally, I worked a little bit within hospice care and found out that it wasn't for me. And so it wasn't the population that I have decided to work with. So as a scope of practice for music therapy, we can work from anywhere from the beginning of life all the way to the end of life and anything in between. So if I were to give you kind of the quick little neat elevator pitch of what music therapy is that it's using music to work on non-musical things. So when I go and I primarily work with kiddos with anything, any sort of intellectual developmental, behavioral issues, things that might come up. And so
like give an example of that.
So I work a lot with kiddos who are on the spectrum, autism spectrum disorder, or a lot of kids like with ADHD or any sort of it's just kind of a big umbrella. And so a lot of what I'm working with in particular, especially within a school setting, is that I'm working with a big group of kids, and I might be, trying to work on impulse control. And so, I might hand them a drum, and I don't necessarily need them to be playing in rhythm or playing drums perfectly every single time, or I don't need them to sing perfectly. I don't need them to play the guitar perfectly, but I might be actually working with them on, when I say stop, we stop. When I say go, we go. And so you're using music to be able to work on that kind of non-musical aspect.
Mm-hmm. So you said you work a lot with kids.
Yes.
Is that like exclusively what
it's not exclusive. It's just kind of like how I have found my way in the world. When I entered the music therapy world, I worked in a mental health hospital as an inpatient care provider. And so when I entered the music therapy world, I was like, I want to work in mental health, primarily with adults. And through my internship, I was able to work in a multitude of fields and just kind of learned that I enjoy hanging out. Playing music with kids is just a little bit more fun for me than hanging out and playing music with adults. And
grown-ups kind of suck. I'm not a super big fan of them myself.
I mean, you're not going to find somebody who is ready to just have fun than a kid.
Yeah.
And a kid wants to have fun and they want to play. And I just get that. That just kind of makes
so what's an
sense.
example in your work where you saw it? You've talked so far about just like the practical, here's what we might do, but what's some examples of where you saw it make a difference?
Oof, man. That's always hard, I think, when you're really discussing therapy in general, because I think progress is never as linear as we want it to be.
Really? I wouldn't know. I mean, I feel
it'd be really...
I feel like it's been like a straight 45-degree incline without not so much as a blip.
Yeah, it seemed that way on the outside too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always incremental changes when I'm seeing a kid. I'm able to go and work with kids twice a week. And so when I'm able to see small incremental changes, but of course they're kids. And so like for every one step forward, the next week you might just see 3 steps back.
Sure.
The changes that you see that I think overall that has been an encouraging thing for me within this profession, within the population that I'm working with, is seeing the overarching over months. Where did we start, and where we are now? And so for me, that's kind of where I've seen the biggest change. I don't know if there's necessarily a particular moment where, and I think a part of it is in the population that I'm working with, because I'm working with some higher functioning kids. And so you're not necessarily seeing all of a sudden like a breakthrough moment. Is that a lot of it is incremental steps over a long period of time, which can wear on you mentally and emotionally, where you're just walking. Like I said, like sometimes it's hard to walk away from those sessions where it's just like, oh man, I hope that was good, because that kid was having a tough day, and that is not a reflection of me, but that can be a hard line to draw emotionally and mentally.
I would imagine for both of you guys, but initially I was just thinking about it when you were talking about working with the kids, if they were having a hard time. But I would imagine for both of you, there's kind of a tricky balance between needing to lead with actual empathy, and enter that room with your people with empathy, and also like boundaries that are fucking waterproof, because otherwise, like I'm going to tell you something you don't know.
Tell me.
I'm not particularly good at boundaries.
Not many people are.
So if I was doing what you guys do, at my current level of expertise with boundaries, I would be a wreck. I would not be able to laugh at home unless it was the laughter of purging
Yeah.
the heaviness that I came home with.
Yeah. You dig real deep and you find your inner asshole. That's how you do it.
Really?
That is what I tell every single one of my supervisees. Like that's a put on your inner asshole hat kind of a day. And what I mean by that isn't actually that you should be an asshole, but what I mean by that is like you have to regulate how much you are choosing to invest yourself versus how much you're choosing to facilitate. And I think that as therapists, hopefully as humans, we need to show up as ourselves. We have to try our best to ground ourselves and then to step into that space where we are facilitating a healing space. But if we show up in that space and we care about how the person responds to that healing space, it's going to start getting really tricky emotionally. If you step into the space and say, I'm going to facilitate a healing space and I'm going to dig deep and find my inner asshole, I'm going to ground, literally. Right? You got to go deep. You got to ground. And you've got to recognize that, like, my care or my focus can't be on that person feeling better by the end of our time together. I have to know that I'm showing up to facilitate the space and to be okay with that person leaving in a place where they're still hurting. And if you can be an asshole in session in that way, you're going to find that you have the stamina to walk with someone long-term through what can oftentimes be really, really devastated, grief-stricken stories. But if you step into that space hoping that they feel better each time, it's going to be exhausting. Like, you won't find the stamina. So that's my inner asshole soapbox lecture.
Well, that must be my experience with therapists is that they must all know that trick, because every single time I've been to a therapist, eventually, if not initially, I ask, how are you doing back-to-back sessions? How do you not need 90 minutes to get over the 60? Because I just passed a person walking out of your office and you're asking me to come in. You didn't even, maybe you took a breath.
Yeah.
Before someone else with a big problem entered your space.
Yeah.
How did...
Well, and I think that there are clinical tools for sure to address some of that. Like, I physically leave my office after every session. It's in some ways like a closing ritual for me, where I whatever happened is what that person needed to have happened in that session. But I leave the space, I close the space, and then I re-enter usually after like filling my water cup or going to the bathroom, and I re-enter it. Like now I prepare this space, which also means I prepare me for this next person.
So Jeremy talked a little bit about how music sort of dovetails with that. For you, how does movement factor in with that stuff?
Yeah. So I think I first tried to understand that as an intern at a psychiatric hospital, where I was finding ways to facilitate movement experiences for teens and trying to find ways to support teens in embodying the emotions that they weren't able to verbalize. So I first started kind of playing with it there as like a social work intern and noticed that some things worked. And as my jobs as a social worker progressed, there were sometimes opportunities to keep exploring that. And then it was probably 12 years ago that I took like my first continuing ed course in some somatic practices that therapists could use. And then it was maybe 10 years ago that I took my first like therapeutic yoga certificate program. And since then, I've continued to try to learn more ways in which movement integrates in the therapy space. And sometimes that's as simple as like asking someone to check in with their body while they're seated on the sofa. Other times it's giving them actual physical strategies to re-regulate their nervous systems. And sometimes that looks like full-on movement or therapeutic movement in the gym that we have at work, where we're creating an hour where we utilize movement to support trauma recovery work, nervous system regulation. Sometimes it's just as straightforward as depression and anxiety management. So I've been gathering a lot of tools in the toolbox that for me as a dancer make a lot of sense, but as a therapist I'm seeing are really effective.
So to sort of flip that on its head, as what does movement do for you personally on the mental side of things?
So what movement does for me is what you and I have experienced in projects together. Like I am focused on a narrative that for me makes sense to share through movement, through film, through imagery. And I think that that's been a resource for me, like from the beginning. I think since I was a little kid, I was dancing out my feelings. And while I am a verbal processor, for me, finding movement or finding like a visual narrative to talk about the experience feels like the capstone or the final statement. It's the final draft. Like I'll talk through all my feelings all day, and Jeremy graciously listens to most of that. But like when I've arrived at the thing, that's where I like for it. When it's a big thing, I like for it to be captured in movement in my body on film. There have been a number of times in my life too where with some body trauma, for me going to an improv jam session was the way in which I worked it out. Talking to a therapist I knew was not going to regulate my body, it was going to activate the trauma more. So going and moving in a way that I didn't have to verbalize, and moving in a way that was witnessed by or shared with other dancers in an improvisation context was very healing, very grounding.
This is in no way movement like dance, but I certainly have found on the movement side of things that if I'm stuck in literally any aspect, if I move my body so that my heart rate is elevated for X amount of time, if we're just talking about walking, like for me, like that needs to be minimum 4 miles, which you could probably do it even faster. But at my height,
is that a tall joke?
Yeah, that's a tall joke. I can walk a pretty decent mile.
I believe it.
You probably could go faster, but like all of those areas where you're stuck.
Yeah.
By the time you come back, not stuck anymore.
Yeah.
Even if the unstuckness means I recognize and accept that there isn't going to be a solution, and I just have to be cool with that.
Yeah.
But usually, like, oh my God, like you're hitting a brick wall with personal issues or creative projects that you just can't figure out a solution for. X amount of, let's say 2 miles into it, all of a sudden it's like, and it slaps you like literally in the face almost.
Yeah, movement coordinates the brain, lets the midbrain process the emotion, the memory, allows for the language center to find words to describe the experience. And just movement clears cortisol, which means we are getting out of fight or flight. And when we're getting out of fight or flight, we're more likely to be able to verbalize things.
I wonder,
I've not considered that as a confessional strategy. We are parents to a teenager.
right, yeah, you might.
We should keep it in mind.
I need to keep it in mind too. Completely separately related.
Yeah, if you feel like you're going to get in trouble for something, just make sure that you're like, no, I have to sit down.
I need to sit down.
Yeah. I just need to.
When Anna asked me to go on a walk, it might be a trap.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we started filming, you were talking about a film that you watched, and I wanted to bring that up because that sort of wraps both of your worlds into the same realm.
Yeah.
Because that involves movement and music. I don't need to tell you, but for the sake of a recording, we need to verbalize that other than movement, well, maybe for me, even above movement, but music is as close as I'll ever come to accepting a religion. Let's say that. And certainly the only spiritual experiences I've ever had were inside of a piece of music.
Yeah.
And you see it like even across art forms, all of us that we know are involved in various art forms, but nobody operates independent from music. The final, this obviously isn't technically making any sound, but I bet the artist was listening to music when they were working on it.
And composed music for the show that was in. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about the film that you watched today.
Yeah, so the film's called Capturing Grace. I think it was released in 2015 by the Mark Morris Dance Group, and it was a documentary taking a look at the work that the Mark Morris Dance Group has done with patients or people, cross out patients, people who have Parkinson's disease. And in this documentary, they follow how dancers and people with Parkinson's disease collaborated to create a full-length evening work.
And just so that I'm not, because I didn't watch it, but you said it made you cry, so that puts it on the must-watch list for me. But just so
me and a whole room full of dance majors cry.
Yeah, that puts it on the short list right there. But you were, and again, I don't want to put words in your mouth because I didn't see it, but you were talking about one instance where someone was even just having trouble just taking a step, it sounded like.
Yeah.
And then cue the music and boom.
Yeah. So she was telling, like in this documentary interview, she was talking about how sometimes the Parkinson's affects her ability to have an even or steady gait and how her feet feel really stuck. And she even said in real time something like, I'm feeling it right now, stood up and showed the camera how her gait was really impaired and said, but if I put on music and I think about dancing, and suddenly it was like a near waltz around her living room. I mean, her brain immediately coordinated in a way with this idea of I'm going to dance to this music that gave her locomotion, whereas before, like seconds earlier, the idea of walking was not accessible to her. Her muscles were not able to execute that function. And there were a number of moments in the film that were really, really meaningful, but that one, I think for me especially, just to see in real time captured on this documentary was really beautiful. And the vulnerability it took for her to share that was beautiful.
Well, and I'm sure you guys have seen it too, but like Alzheimer's patients or dementia patients that don't they basically, to the outward observer, don't even know where they are, and they haven't recognized their own immediate family for years. And they're like 95 years old, and you set them down at the piano, and it turns out that they can play like Mozart beautifully.
Yeah.
And it turns out that this 95-year-old, that she took piano lessons when she was 7 in 1903, and knows it by heart. Not even sheet music up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for a minute, while she's playing, all of that dementia sort of seemingly evaporates until she pulls her hands back from the keyboard. That's why, if I had to pick a religion, it would be music.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know that there's a question there, other than just keep talking about how these two art forms.
Yeah.
Well, all art forms of any kind, but these two particularly seem to have a more direct line to brain health or lack thereof.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking as a complete idiot, non-expert. I'm saying that to go you into elaborating on my horribly unqualified speculation.
But unqualified doesn't match here. It's qualified when you've had the experience.
Oh, see? Follow me for more mental health tips.
Yeah, I mean, there's an entire field of music therapy called neurologic music therapy. In fact, in town, there's a really brilliant music therapist. If you ever get the chance to hang out with Pete Miskevich,
I will seek that out now.
seek him out. He is brilliant, is wonderful. As soon as I got into music therapy, I did everything that I could to be able to go observe his sessions. And he's absolutely, absolutely brilliant. And so neurologic music therapy is kind of its own kind of like, for lack of a better word, facet or like practice of music therapy. And a big part of it is kind of a little bit what was going on with the idea of Parkinson's, but is also, you see a lot with traumatic brain injuries, right? So there's a part of the brain that has now affected motion. And so why is it when somebody with Parkinson's or with somebody with a brain injury, when they're walking, their walking gait is unsteady, right? When most of us are able to walk, we're able to walk with some sort of rhythm, right? And so with Parkinson's or with TBI, you might have a little bit of like a, right? And so you're able to use music, you're able to give rhythm as a cue, because the idea is that rhythm and beats act as an organizer for our brain. And we've all experienced this in I feel like we've all experienced this, is that when you're at the party and there's that guy who can kind of play the guitar, like he's kind of playing Wonderwall and he's like doing it, but you're like, oh, those are the chords, but it's like not the thing, you know what I mean? It's like there's that just awful pause in between the chord switch. You know what I mean? And it's like this, like, oh, it's just like this mentally like painful thing. And it's because our brain, as soon as you give somebody a rhythm, our brain wants this. Our brain starts to predict this. We want this to happen no matter what happens. And then we start to give them. And now we're all like, oh no. And so when we're working with patients that may have where a motor function is compromised, and we start to give them a beat. Now it's no longer, now we're accessing a different part of the brain. Now we're actually bringing in a different area of the brain, and we're actually able to create new neural pathways. So the part of the brain that is now damaged, that was previously damaged, we're actually able to access a new part of the brain and create new neural pathways to actually be able to achieve that sort of even gait by using rhythm, by using beat, by using music. Pete would be able to tell you far more beyond than what I'm giving you, like just the real watered down version of it. But it's super powerful and incredible to watch. So I did want to add off topic of that. So this with Alzheimer's and dementia, there's a great documentary that is called Alive Inside. Have you heard of this? Have you heard of Alive Inside?
I don't think so.
It's not music therapy in a clinical sense. However, it does show the power of music. And so the idea is that they're taking all these Alzheimer's and dementia patients who might, in a sense, be in a completely nonverbal state. And so they talk to the family and they create, back in the day of iPods, they create the playlist on an iPod of these individuals, like preferred music, like what they loved, what they grew up with. And so they, these patients who were at one point nonverbal, they put the headphones on and they play some of their most favorite music, and all of a sudden you're able to see these patients all of a sudden come alive. And now they're talking, they're lucid, they're present, they're reminiscing. And even when you take the headphones off, you see the lasting effect of that. And so it's actually an interesting documentary to be able to see, because they're actually interviewing staff and they're like, yeah, this person was nonverbal all day, had this session, and then for the rest of the day was just awake and talking. And it's a really powerful thing.
Did they address in that whether or not the music in question was from when that patient was between 18 and 26 years old?
That's a really fascinating question. And in fact, that's actually a really prominent thing in music therapy, is that when you are trying to guess patient preferred music, is that's actually the era of age. Because that is the prime dating, like, and falling in love and courting, that is like the prime era, especially with, with that age of population.
I didn't even think about that part of it, but I remember reading articles and so on about that. And you know how every generation eventually is like, these young kids they suck. Their music sucks. Blah, blah.
When does that happen?
Well, it hasn't luckily happened to me yet, but I think I'm at the age where generationally it's happening. I think it happens. It happens the first time you hear one of your favorite songs at the grocery store. Which at this point we're all it's been happening. But from a psychology standpoint, it's not that you actually think new music sucks. Yeah. It's that one, the music that you, no matter what, even if you are open, like we probably all are, open to new stuff, if you really wanted to go listen to something that hits you at your core, probably by default it's going to be something that came out in that when you were in that age range. And the reason that generations think that subsequent generations are stupid is not because they think that or that their music sucks. It's that their mere existence means that I'm looking at evidence that I cannot possibly still be 27. Yeah. That's it. Their offense is just at the fact that they are no longer in their mid-20s.
Is this like some kind of internalized ageism at that point?
Yeah,
or like
and
the
it's not even
of adolescence.
It's not even intentional. It's that
I don't want to go back to being.
I don't either. I
wouldn't
this
either.
At all.
But it's just that the existence of younger people means that you yourself are no
old and-
longer
yeah.
in that probably it's related. And I just
you're old
forgot
and you're
this part.
dying.
I'm no longer in the fall in love and procreate age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we're at the age where that's physically possible, but it's not when
Right.
I'm no longer at the age where the world is wide open.
Right. The world is no longer your
Endless
oyster
possibilities.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Have you read much or listened to much of Oliver Sacks?
Oh yeah, I have a little bit.
So he was a big proponent of music therapy and taking a lot of drugs, which is a different, but his,
Two sides of the same coin.
brilliant man. I mean, boy, the world really lost a really brilliant, beautiful human being in Oliver. But he was a big proponent of music therapy and about the neurological bounds in which music can reach people. He's got a lot of great writings and out there about. So I check out Oliver.
I think I have read some of his stuff, but it was years ago, and I can't remember. But I do remember really liking the book or two that I read.
Yeah.
Yeah, because for a while I got super nerdy about all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it started with by accident, because I think Lily and Owen's grandparents had it on their coffee table, and it was about the psychology of birth order and basically statistically where people pretty consistently land based on their birth order.
Yeah.
And that was fascinating.
What were some of the big takeaways?
Well, I'm an oldest child, so by that book's criteria, it seems like our family was sort of flipped backwards.
Okay. Which is why I call bullshit on all of that birth order stuff.
Yeah. But it was still interesting.
I might have therapists mad at me just for hearing that. Okay, I think it's all bullshit. But I do want to hear what was relevant to you.
What I remember, and this was probably even before Lily was born, so it's a long time ago that I read this. But like firstborns usually get married or permanently partnered at a much younger age. Statistically much more likely to do professionally what one of their parents did. What else? Typically more conservative.
Do you see now why I say that I think,
and that's why I thought
birth order stuff's bullshit?
And that's why I thought, well, maybe our family is flipped on the head, because my sister has always seemed like much more mature than I am. None of those other things are true, but she certainly seemed like a more mature person than I ever was. So I was like, well, maybe it's backwards. But
here's what I think, that I think that birth order perspectives are trying to understand, but I don't think that they make the mark. I don't think that they actually get the thing. What they are looking at through a weird lens is trauma patterns.
I was just going to ask that question.
Yeah. So I think that when we're talking about this idea of like, oh, you're a middle child, oh, so you must have blah, blah, blah. No, that's just a trauma pattern that tends to show up in this birth order. I don't think the birth order is actually a predictor of personality or who you do or don't marry or how you mimic your parents professionally.
Seems like a personality test.
Oh, do you want me to get on that soapbox?
I mean, sure.
I also
do you want her to get on this?
Every personality test. Are you a blue, green, and orange, yellow, or a beaver bear?
Here you go. No, I want to hit a hot topic. Because I want this on film. What's your take on the enneagram?
I hate the enneagram so much. And listen.
I want to hear this. For real.
I'm going to talk to the camera.
Talk to the close-up camera.
I'm talking to it, yeah.
Okay.
I understand that the Enneagram books and perspectives have brought meaning to you. I understand that they have helped you make sense of a world that feels disordered. However, if you ask me one more time what number I am, I swear to God, I'm going to punch the camera off the wall. Like, for real. I can't emphasize how much we need to stop using categories to predict our own behavior and choices. Stop using that as some sort of guide to help you figure out problems in your life. Just stop. Dig deep and find you. You have the answer. You have the capacity to know. You don't need somebody else's imposed structure to figure that out for you. That's my soapbox.
Yay!
Underneath in flashing titles, I'm gonna put, tell me you're an Enneagram 1 without saying you're an Enneagram 1.
Okay, so how many Enneagrams are there? 9?
9, I think.
Yeah, so I've taken like 5 Enneagram tests. Turns out I am, if I remember this right, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, skip 7, skip sometimes 8, occasionally not, and 9. It's not.
Well, I did it years ago, and I was like, well, that sounds almost right, but not some. And like, where are you at mentally on the day that you took that test?
Exactly.
Because for a couple of years, I was like, oh, I'm definitely an Enneagram 2. I'm not a 2. I'm a 4, and I was.
Well, you were that day.
I was a 2 that day, because
Yeah.
guess where 4s go supposedly when they are
I don't know.
dysregulation?
Somewhere where the
They
wing,
go to the 2.
the
They go
wing
to the
3.
2.
They go to the 2 land.
Yeah.
Yeah. So listen, I mean, in all seriousness, if it helps somebody order and make sense of their own patterns, great. But don't be stuck in the patterns that the Enneagram number says you have.
Right.
Like, I think
it's just, I have the same opinion of the astrology stuff too.
I was about to
because
ask, yeah.
that's a good, like by broad strokes, I mean like that brush is this wide.
Yeah.
That's a good, like, I haven't gotten to know you yet, but we're now going to be talking about this sort of spectrum instead of this one. That's cool as a starting point, but
It's like a first date topic.
but yeah, like all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And then you start reading it through, like, I am a Cancer, and you start reading through what Cancers absolutely are.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, am I like a completely fucking broken Cancer? Because I'm the opposite of that thing.
Yes.
And this says it's my birthday is this day, so I have to be that thing. And I've not, and I've never have been that thing. I've been quite opposite of that. So
Yeah.
it's all interesting to me, and but I'm not a big. It's all interesting.
Yeah.
And you'll see, I occasionally post stuff like
for
that,
you,
mostly
Seth. I
because
love that it's interesting for you. I'm sorry, that was like my best shitty snot voice.
I thought you said it was supposed to be inner asshole.
Oh,
Out
Seth.
on camera.
Oh, Seth. You're in her home.
Oh, that's right.
You're in her home.
That's right.
It's free range.
Yeah.
Suddenly, there was 20 minutes less to this segment.
Yeah. Well, how long have we? Oh my God, we've been doing this for an hour already.
No
Really?
way. I don't believe that for a
57:26.
second. I don't believe that for a second. I wanted to ask a question of you.
Yeah.
And you.
I'm an Enneagram 4.
Seriously.
Oh my god.
No, I was gonna ask if you could, it doesn't have to be in particular order, just off the top of your head, most influential albums of your life. And it could be 5, it could be 10, it could be 1. I know.
I think
And it doesn't have to be comprehensive.
Well, it's got to be, and I don't know if I could name an album per se, but
Sure.
Certainly I sort of remember I remember MTV was running
Yeah.
the re-recording of Home Sweet Home by Motley Crue in heavy rotation.
Yeah.
And then Nevermind came out, and we never saw Motley Crue ever again.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Yes.
you, Nirvana.
Yeah. So that has to Nirvana, Soundgarden,
Yeah.
those guys,
Yeah.
Pearl Jam,
Yeah.
all those guys sort of get lumped in together
Yeah. That era.
because it was hair metal
Right.
until that one day in 1992 when everything changed.
Ripped jeans and flannel, baby.
And then for me personally, just you said album, but the Beatles factored heavily in my household.
Yeah.
Also, probably because music is so tied to memory, and memory also ties back the other way. I mean, with me, anything that long term sticks probably has a song associated with it.
Yeah.
And if I think of a memory, and if I play a song,
Yeah.
it probably has memories associated with it.
Got it.
For example, I wouldn't necessarily put this on the influential list, but for years I grew up in Wisconsin.
What part?
Rural Wisconsin.
Rural. Okay.
So there's not a lot to do in the pre-internet days, and that was back when Madison, Wisconsin, culturally might as well have been New York City.
Yeah. Wow.
So what we did on the weekends was the four of you borrow somebody's car, or maybe one of you is cool enough to have your own car.
Yeah.
Not me, but you get a case and a half of beer and a pint of schnapps, and you just drive around the countryside until that's all gone.
Yeah.
So I'm not exaggerating. From 1987 until just about 4 years ago, if any song from Back in Black came on, I can taste old style.
No way.
30 years later.
Wow. It's that much.
Specifically Heileman's old style.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a sensory experience.
Yeah.
Wow. You're taken aback.
And then it's not one that I listen to a lot,
Yeah.
but formative experience was we were not wealthy when I grew up. So we didn't, we were the family that didn't have cable TV, didn't have a VCR.
Yeah.
So like my dad would go to the library and rent reel-to-reel films. So I know all of the Laurel and Hardy movies, the Bing Crosby, Bob Hope road movies, Three Stooges. I've seen all of them multiple times. But he'd also rent vinyl LPs.
Yeah.
Or check them out. And he brought home the Alan Lomax Prison Work Song compilation.
Okay.
And we listened to it, but also he was like, "Hey boys," because we probably were raising hell in the house, and he got each of us, like, we each got 2 pieces of 2x4, and he was so we pretended like we were the work gang, and so the 2x4s were the sound of the axes or the sledgehammers on the railroad spike. And so he would do the call, "No more, my lord."
Right.
And then we, and we did that for like what seemed like all day. It was probably like 45 minutes. But,
Sure.
And that changed everything for me. It was listening to those work songs. And 25 years later, I found that record on CD.
Do you have it?
I do somewhere.
Nice.
Who listens to CDs anymore?
I don't know.
But I think I still have the
I think
CDs.
my car's got a CD player if you ever find it.
But I did find it either on YouTube or on Spotify.
Amazing.
When I go home, I'll find that one particular song and send it to you.
Perfect.
But what about you?
I mean, I grew up listening to a lot of music associated with the church. So I suppose if you'd asked me then what was influential, it would have been something there. But if I really think back to something where like, when did music move me? It was listening to Swan Lake on vinyl at my parents' house. There was something in that music that like made my body move, and I remember that at a very young age. If I think like teenage angsty Hannah, Jagged Little Pill was the album. I mean, I was like, my heart has been spoken for. And the words of my heart are being sung.
Alanis.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Very much so. Yeah.
The big song famously written by Full House is written about
Yes.
Dave Coulier.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. I felt every word of that. I don't even know who I was screaming it at
And you were
the
like,
time, but I was
cut it out.
screaming it at someone.
To the abyss, into the void.
Yeah. And I forgot this would go high on the list too, is that my grandpa was a big vinyl collector. Like literally everyone in human history tended towards music from his 18 to 25-year-old. So lots of big band jazz.
Yeah.
So us kids, we didn't care for a lot of that. But his Spike Jones records almost got worn out.
Wow.
Have you listened to Spike Jones? He's the reason Weird Al exists.
I believe that.
Except in a big band.
Yeah.
And he played like starter pistols and bicycle horns.
Yeah. Awesome.
It's if you like Weird Al, you'd like Spike Jones. I think you're required to like Spike Jones if you like.
It's a prerequisite.
Yeah. Well, and that's how you can be a Weird Al fan and still be a hipster douchebag about it, because you can be like, Weird Al's okay, but if you're really cool, you like Spike Jones.
Good on Spike Jones. Yeah. Awesome.
How about you?
Oh my gosh. Well, I grew up listening to the Eagles, Allman Brothers, and my mom is a huge Jackson Browne fan, which didn't strike me until I was like 26, 27. The absolute heartbreak and beauty of Jackson Browne's early works. Oh my gosh. It's so good. I remember the first time I heard Ants Marching by Dave Matthews Band, bought the CD from a kid on the bus for $5. Under the Table and Dreaming, worth it, 100%.
I had that CD too.
Oh, it was so good. That was Dave Matthews Band and Eric Clapton were the two guys that made me want to pick up the guitar. I can't play guitar like either of those guys whatsoever, but they were the ones that made me want to do it. First time I remember in 6th grade, I heard Metallica's Memory Remains from Reload. I was like, I don't know what that is, but I like that. And it's not their best. I mean, revisiting it is a little hard, but that's okay. That's okay. But like,
what grade were you in?
I would have been 6th, watching MTV.
Okay.
Yeah, Memory Remains.
I think
and then,
Ride the Lightning for me was like 7th grade.
Yeah, see, and I didn't even dive into their earlier works until later on in life. And I was like, oh man, For Whom the Bell Tolls kills. The first time I heard, and I mean, anybody who knows anything about music with me knows that my complete and dire obsession with David Bazan, Pedro the Lion. I've seen him like 25 times. I've talked to him 5 times, cried talking to him all 5 times.
Nice.
But the first time I heard the EP, The Only Reason I Feel Secure, I was 15 years old, riding in my buddy's car, my buddy Paul, who's from LA. And so he had a whole comp mix that his brother made. And so that's where I really got to learn. I learned about Pedro the Lion with that, learned about Bright Eyes.
Oh yeah, Bright Eyes.
Learned about Modest Mouse, early Modest Mouse, The Moon and Antarctica. That was huge. I was obsessed with Tool as many as a 15-year-old.
Many 15-year-old guys are.
I'm now the dyslexic version of 15, and I still love Tool.
I still do. I love Tool. I have no shame about that. Yeah, it's albums of, oh man, the first time I heard one of my favorite instrumental bands was Unwed Sailor. They have a 4-track EP called the Firecracker EP. And I honestly believe that set the mark of kind of how I write music. That was unbelievable. That completely shaped me. And then, of course, like many of us, the first time we listened to Godspeed You Black Emperor, Lift Your Tiny Fists Like Antennas to Heaven. Oh my gosh. I mean, who doesn't cry listening to Storm? I mean, I remember being like 22 and driving in my truck and just driving around West Michigan and just getting lost and listening to that entire album start to finish and just being completely blown away.
So let me ask you this: just out of curiosity, if either of you guys have done this, because I tend to my listening habits, probably unsurprisingly, tend to be a little on the obsessive side.
Yes.
So, like, hey, I made you a mixtape. Get the fucking shit out of here. I don't want to hear a mixtape.
Yeah.
I hit play on Tool.
Yes.
I'm not going to listen to anything but Tool for the next 4 hours minimum.
Yes.
Et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. I just recently did it the other day. I got really stuck on, so another guy from my childhood was Bruce Hornsby in The Range. The Way It Is album. Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh. It's the most 80s sounding thing. But that song, The Way It Is.
That's my favorite Tupac cover.
It's great. I mean, look, there's a reason. There's a reason he grabbed that song. That song's a bop. It's so good. It's lyrically, it's awesome. The drum sound is horrible.
Do we have that one on vinyl? Has that been like a cleaning album in our house?
Not yet.
Oh,
No, you're getting mixed up with Steve Winwood.
God, that's the one. That's the one.
Come on, Higher Love? Get out of here. That song rules. But I got
Does he put high in all the song titles? Because I was just about to say something about the high life.
Back in the high life again. Yeah, absolutely. I play that every time I'm on a boat. Doesn't matter how big the boat is, but I'm back in the high life again. But I got stuck on Bruce Hornsby, The Way It Is, and I just listened to it. I tried to move on to like another track.
God damn it, that's gonna be in my head.
And then I was like, I didn't want to listen to anything else, and I listened to it probably. I mean, I couldn't even begin.
I hate that song, but I can't not go doodle-doo, doodle-doo, doodle-doo.
Absolutely.
Like actually do the motion of the arpeggio.
Yes, absolutely. Here's the interesting thing. I didn't know about Bruce Hornsby, but are you a fan of Bon Iver? Yeah, absolutely. On one of his more recent albums, he has this great song called it's supposed to be Man Like You, but he did like the weird artist thing where it's like man apostrophe you like. I had no idea. Bruce Hornsby did the piano part for that. He actually co-wrote that song. I know. That blew my mind because I grew up on Bruce Hornsby, so I think it's it's right here in the heart. Yeah.
Real quick, what do you guys got coming up?
I'm going to wrap up teaching May term at Hope College, and then I choreographed a local production of Chicago, and choreographed it in a real spicy 21 and up way.
Nice.
So that goes to the stage
Chicago,
May 26th.
Oh, no, she didn't.
She did.
I forgot to see. I meant to see. God damn.
So yeah, and then you and I have been sort of mulling around a film idea that we can share in another time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I got on my plate. I'm going to be looking at just all that jazz for the next couple weeks.
So much jazz.
So much jazz.
I don't have anything I just a few solo performances, but just kind of like, weddings and things like that. I'm a part of a 3-piece instrumental band right now, and we've kind of been a little bit on a hiatus. So I'm hoping to be able to get back into that, get back to writing, because that's been a really wonderful creative output with with 2 other just amazing musicians, and a potential.
Oh, is this new to me too?
Well, no, a potential reunion of sorts. Maybe I don't want to. I don't want to speak too. I don't want to speak too much, but that will just be fun to get together and see if it comes of anything. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. How about you? What do you got going on?
This isn't about me.
But I want it to be.
Yeah. You should have thought of that an hour and 20 minutes ago.
I asked you questions.